Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Music Reviewer Podcast. Today's going to be an episode of Best and Worst Track of the Week. This episode of Best and Worst Track of the Week is for the week of October 3rd. And if you're new to Best and Worst Track of the Week, welcome, and welcome to the Music Reviewer Podcast. I review albums, mainly albums that are a month old, but also from time to time I review an album that was, profound to me in some way in the past, good or bad. And the gist of Best and Worst Track of the Week is me taking all new entries into this week's Billboard Hot 100, giving each track a letter grade, and picking one that's the worst, picking one that's the best. That's all it is. So overall, I think this week, compared to last week, was a lot more diverse, more interesting as well. And interesting could go both ways. It can go bad or good. I'm going to say this week was more leaning onto the side of bad. This has probably been the most, negative tilting week that I've done so far. Not to say that there wasn't good tracks on this week, but I really found this week to be one of the more fun weeks where I kind of just went in on some tracks. But let's not delay it any further. So if you did tune in last week, you do understand that last week there was basically a mini album bomb from Young Boy Never Broke Again. That was in itself, an adventure. This week overall, the charts stayed, pretty dynamic. For one, BTS went back up to number one with the track Dynamite. I found this to be surprising and impressive at the same time, mainly due to the fact that they're keeping this up quite unexpectedly. I don't think anyone knew they were going to stay up this high or get back up to number one, especially beating out WAP, which has felt like a behemoth. WAP is big for its own reasons. It like I said, it went back down to number two, but I guess it is losing momentum on some fronts. Mainly because I guess it became a meme. Maybe the meme's dying down. Overall, I did enjoy both tracks, but it's saying something that BTS is able to stay at number one. But the other things I've noticed that were interesting, Mood Swings by Pop Smoke featuring Lil TJ has some positive trajectory. It went up to 20 this week. And then also the phenomenon of AJR's Bang keeps on impressing. It went all the way up to 33. At this point, I don't care how far up it goes. Honestly, if it goes up as high as it can get, I wouldn't be surprised if it reaches the top 10, maybe even higher. One Beer by Hardy, our first worst track of the week, still climbing up all the way to 52. It's winning that slow race. It's that tortoise that keeps on moving and moving very slowly. And then Pretty Heart by Parker McCollum, kind of the same story, even though I gave this best track of the week 1 week. Kind of slowly climbing up to 61 there. I think Parker McCollum is slightly more disadvantaged, though, due to the fact that he's like a Texas country artist and he's not really too linked to Nashville. But good job on his front. And then last week, there was this track called Gone Too Soon by Andrew Janakis, and this up-and-coming country artist. I predicted that this song by him would become a hit, or at least gain some traction, and I guess I was wrong because it dropped out. Now, just because something drops out 1 week, especially after its debut, doesn't mean we won't see it again. The tracks do re-enter. And I still suspect this track might gain some traction, but I was kind of appalled that it went out so soon. And then, of course, our little baby album bomb by Young Boy Never Broke Again. 6 of the tracks dropped out, so that's not surprising, especially with being an album bomb and a lot of the quality being slightly subpar. But let's go ahead and get into the first track. The name of the track is Blind by DaBaby featuring Young Thug. Coming in at 95. This track was decent. It didn't impress me too much, but I tend to like DaBaby as a rapper overall. His flow sounds good here. There's a nice usage of hybrid singing and rapping. There's moments of technicality as well where he really shows off his chops. And then Young Thug fits in the track decently. did like his delivery overall. It's captivating, but somehow also casual sounding, if that makes sense. And then overall, the track grooves pretty well. The beat's good. I like that it has this West Coast vibe to it. There's also some relaxed guitar instrumentals as well in the track. It's not bad. I give it a C plus. And the next track coming in at 93 is titled Whole Lotta Choppas by DaBaby. Now, I wasn't too familiar with who DaBaby is, but I guess some brief research leads me to see that he's a Detroit rapper, underground. He's kind of gotten a breakthrough with this track, catching some momentum on TikTok. And overall, a lot of the stuff that gains momentum just because of TikTok, most of the time, not all the time, it isn't quality for obvious reasons. But this track overall, I found it to be okay. There's a bouncy electronic beat on here that's almost 90s sounding. I think it samples Whoop There It Is at one point on the percussion parts. And then there's an interesting delivery and usage of effects on DaBaby's voice. And honestly, there's some elements of originality on here. I thought he sounds better than the average innocuous trap rapper. I'm not sure how much of a shelf life this track has, though. But the track overall is nice. It's quirky, but it's also not corny. And the instrumental has a nice groove. It carries the song quite well throughout the track, so I give it a B. And then the next track we got was Wet, parentheses, She Got That by YFN Lucci at 92. And you know how I guess foreshadowed the beginning of this, track review of this week being quite negative. Well, this is kind of where it starts. I had to look up who YFN Lucci is. He's an Atlanta rapper, singer-songwriter that's kind of been at it since 2014, since he's been dropping, releases, mainly EPs and mixtapes. And apparently he had a hit like in 2017, but I tried listening to it, but I just couldn't remember. I couldn't remember it even existing. But anyways, how was Wet? She Got That. This track sounds innocuous. It features a lot of run-of-the-mill trap styles and aesthetics. It's kind of like a poor man's Pop Smoke, aesthetically speaking. He doesn't really sound like Pop Smoke, but it's kind of, the songwriting is something you'd expect Pop Smoke to have put out. And the delivery is pretty unconvincing. It lacks personality, it lacks energy overall. The whole track just kind of stays stagnant. It's boring. Not really much else I can say about it. I gave it a D. And that's saying something. I thought this track was pretty terrible, but it didn't get worst track of the week. And, the next track was Megusta featuring Cardi B and Myke Towers by Anitta at 91. Overall, I thought this track just sounded really Bush League. It sounds generic, especially with these cheap reggae guitar instrumentals in the track. There's an awkward dance breakdown that's somehow worse than like Black Eyed Peas quality dance breakdowns. Anitta sounds completely amateur here. She sounds like a celebrity that is trying to push a pop career that paid for some producers to help her. Cardi B at least brings some energy and angst to the track, and that's saying a lot because I'm not typically a fan of Cardi B. And Myke Towers here continues to not really impress me. Like a lot of tracks that I've heard him on. Yeah, he's not bad, but there's literally countless other Latin artists that could have done a better job or sounded at least more interesting. Example, Ozuna, Bad Bunny, J Balvin, etc. So I give this track a D-. The next track was one of the more interesting tracks of the week. It's When You Down, featuring Lil Durk by Lil Tecca and Polo G at 90. And this is, one of the tracks that made it off Lil Tecca's album that released a couple weeks ago. He didn't really manage to put too much on the charts, which really isn't a bad thing, but I tend to be more partial to Lil Tecca overall. I don't think he's that bad. I enjoy some of his material. But this track overall, there's like this sluggish guitar track that comes in and out. Lil Tecca sounds above average here. He sings decently. He raps well. He's on the hook too, so it's a decent hook. Some there's some playful rhythmic ideas thrown in. It's not lazy sounding. And then the track overall has like this hard knock thug life type aesthetic to it. Lil Durk sounds probably the least distinct, but he's not really a weak link either. He just did okay. And there's a huge like sub bass thing going on in the track. It's super low and loud in the mix. It's not as distracting as you'd think, but it's definitely noticeable when I was kind of listening to it a few times. But I give it a B. The next track was also off Lil Tecca's album, coming in at 80, Dolly, and it's featuring Lil Uzi Vert as well. This track overall not as strong as When You Down, but it was okay. It's playful sounding, kind of this collab between Lil Uzi Vert and Tecca trading bars throughout the track. I'd say they don't really complement each other. For some reason, I think Tecca sounds far more interesting than Uzi, but I've also heard the contrary, so I don't know if that's just me. There's just more character, in my opinion, in Tecca's delivery, and also Uzi's singing isn't nearly as interesting as well. His standalone verse, where he raps, is a lot better, in my opinion, than his singing bits. And that's mainly due because on the actual rap verse that he does, he has his famous rasp on it. That just sounds like more like natural and organic, I guess. It just sounds more interesting in my opinion too. So it's okay. I give it a B minus. And then we got another pretty interesting track, mainly because the music that this track provides isn't really too popular anymore. It's kind of like this adult alternative, soulful pop that I guess you saw more of like in the 2000s and early 2010s. This track was One Too Many by Keith Urban as a duet with Pink at 62. It's not a terrible track. My main gripe with it just sounds inoffensive. It's clean and pristine pop music. I guess, as blunt as a butter knife. There's a similar production style to like Slow Hands by Niall Horan on here, if you know that track. It's like that kind of thing. And I think overall on the vocal department, Pink outshines Keith Urban. She just sounds, more talented. Even though Keith Urban's a fine singer himself, but this definitely isn't a country track. For one, yeah, this is not a country track. If you're expecting a country track, and then it sounds like this could have fit better, like in 2000s. Like I said, aesthetically, like when people weren't drawn to like trap beats or like slutty, sexy music, a la Ariana Grande. But anyways, I can't really see this track planning out any bigger. But knowing the way I predict things, like last week, this track probably get pretty huge. I guess it tries, so I give it a B. Next track was pretty interesting as well. This is by an artist I typically don't vibe with when he goes in a more soulful pop direction. It was Diamonds by Sam Smith at 51. So first of all, the track kind of has like a bit of annoyance at the beginning with this hooky intro, with this repetitive diamonds, diamonds, diamonds part. But other than that, the track it's fine. Like there's like an annoying snap track that I hate on a lot of pop music, but I didn't really mind when the track got to the beat drop in the chorus, where it's a decent moment. It has like this Charlie Puth-esque production style with this punchy pop bass line that structures the instrumental, and there's some decent scratchy guitars. There's some decent little electronic embellishments that are thrown in and out as well. And I think this was a wise choice for Sam to put a single out with this type of style, especially since he tends to do better, in my opinion, on energetic instrumentals that are more EDM-centric, which this track isn't, but it's close enough, and it stays away from the ballads that I think he's not very good on. So I give this a B minus. So yeah, this is not too long of an episode today. We're already to the best and worst track of the week part. We always start on the worst track so we can end on a positive note. And boy, this worst track, I don't really keep tabs of all the worst tracks I've done, but this really might take the cake. This one just really annoyed me. This was Holy featuring Chance the Rapper by Justin Bieber. So on face value, I guess you'd say maybe this track wouldn't be that bad. I mean, Chance the Rapper did flop with his last album, The Big Day, and so did Justin Bieber. But on paper, you'd think maybe they could come together to put something out that's not completely hated or just annoying. But mainly where I'm getting at here is just like the track that they put out just has no character. It's very one dimensional. It's very, I guess, produced, if that's the right way to put it. It just seems calculated. Like they really needed to stay relevant right now, so they put this single out. And then musically, the track is just very over sentimental. It, like I said, it's generic, so it's very sanitary, inoffensive. The typical, middle-aged housewife is gonna have this on her playlist. And I'm sorry if that offends anyone. And just overall, I'm not a fan of this piano instrumental on here. It's meant to sound overly cute. So it's just playing to that calculated, character that this track needs. Justin just sounds annoying on this. He's not a bad singer, but his vocals don't save him on here. The lyrics are cheesy. I hate the over sappiness of like these pseudo gospel moments. So this has a big gospel theme, but it sounds completely inauthentic. If it was trying to go for like a religious theme, which obviously it kind of does, it failed. And then Chance is unfortunately not doing this track any favors. He just sounds as goofy as he did like on his tracks on The Big Day, I think. And I don't even remember much of that album, but he kind of just isn't sounding to his best potential. I'm just really annoyed by this track. It's just cheesy gospel moments after another. The end is just the fucking cherry on top because it goes for this grandiose moment where they really squeeze that towel of all this gospelness it's just soaked in, and they get every little piece out. It's a bad track. I'm not going to say anything else. Just listen to it. And then we have our best track of the week, Without You, featuring Amanda Shires by Luke Combs at 70. Honestly, this won by default just because of the rest of the tracks on here just kind of weren't up to the level of this thing. And I didn't really honestly like this track that much, but it has a nice genuineness to it. And this was a track that came off, I believe, Luke Combs' deluxe album. Amanda Shires is, I guess, the fiddle player on this track. She contributes in that respect. I honestly don't know much about her, but she's a country artist that is also instrumentalist. There's a really big, pretty organic soundscape on this track, some organic textures, like I said, with some fiddle, acoustic guitars. It has a bit of like a 2000s or late 90s country flair, so you will feel a little nostalgic if you know what I'm talking about listening to this track. And it's just genuine. It sounds very, like I said, throwback. It's a country track that really aims to bring the lyrics to the forefront, which really isn't exactly a revelation. A lot of country aims for that, but this really accomplishes it with how Luke Combs describes his past and his upbringing and how he really appreciates the people that had helped him be successful. I guess that's the gist of the track. And the track, it accomplishes that and tells a story about his life, allegedly. I don't know if any of it's true. But yeah, best track of the week on here. But thanks for sticking around if you were listening this long. I know I got a little heated on some points, but I'd rather be charismatic if it means, telling the truth of what I feel. But yeah, whatever. I don't mean to be too preachy, but thanks for listening to the Music Review Podcast, however you streamed. Thanks for joining in. I'm on YouTube, all major streaming platforms. Take care of yourselves. I'll review some of your music soon.